Meg Perez. I'm 49 years old, and I am the mother of 7 children. But I only got to keep one of those children, and I'm going to tell you about that here shortly. I currently am married, and I have one son that lives with me. His name is Keegan, and he's 10 years old. My husband, Steve, and I have been married for almost 4 years. I own my own business. It is an athletic accessory manufacturer. In my spare time, I spend most of that spare time with my son Keegan. I love to spend time with him. He's just the joy of my life. And I am also a runner. I've been running probably since I was 15, off and on, but really seriously since the year 2000. So about 15 years now I've been running, and got into racing and ultra marathons, and so that's a big part of who I am now. I don't race ultra marathons anymore, but I do still run and work out for fitness. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and so I'm going to go back to my childhood and just kind of give you an idea of who I am and where I've come from. I was born the youngest of 4 children in Cincinnati to my parents, who were middle-class parents, middle-class family, and grew up on the west side, working class, middle class. We were a Catholic family, born and raised Catholic, and Catholic educated through 12th grade. During my childhood, I think I quickly realized that there was God, and I fiercely loved God. I had a just, I think, through going to Mass every Sunday and just being raised in an environment where God existed, I really had a fierce love for God. And I even considered at a certain young age of 6 to become a nun and enter the religious life, but that did not work out. And but that just kind of gives you an idea of where my heart was. My family at home, although very Catholic and on the outside very religious people, we were raised to know and understand the importance of our last name and what family we came from, and to not embarrass that family outside of the 4 walls that we grew up in. And so we learned very quickly to present a certain front to the outside world, and to live a certain kind of life with a certain kind of standard. However, at home, it wasn't warm and fuzzy, and it was a very abusive environment, verbally and physically. And at a very young age, I was also the victim of sexual abuse as well. So that really molded my heart as well. On top of my love for God, it really wounded me. And so as I got older, I really became defenseless against people who would prey on someone who was a good person. And so at the age of 15, I experienced my first date rape. And that was a young man that actually went to school with my brothers, and I actually, that was my first experience with that. As I got older, I really decided that I needed to take control of my world, and I developed an eating disorder around that time. And that eating disorder, I really suffered with that for about 30 years. I credit Jesus Christ with healing me of that. But it was a torturous 30 years that I dealt with those challenges. And that eating disorder was developed out of a need to really control my environment, kind of like tame the chaos, which of course it doesn't do, it just causes more problems. But it was a way for me to try to have some control over a life I couldn't control. Subsequently, I experienced date rape at least 2 more times, and so that just damaged my heart even more, and again, really just left me defenseless to the world. And so what I began to do is to try to make decisions that would make me appear to be stronger. And so I entered the United States Marine Corps, and I, thought that that would make me stronger and make me able to defend myself and be somebody. And of course, Marines are special, but it didn't do that. And in fact, what happened is I was just completely ill-prepared to deal with the world. And so I got into a relationship with someone and got pregnant right away, and really panicked because I never thought it would happen to me. And I knew that abortion was not an answer for me. I had been raised in a pro-life environment. My mother worked for Right to Life of Greater Cincinnati for the Dr. and Mrs. Wilkie. And so I was very fearful of what my parents would say, but I knew that I had to choose life. So I decided to take an honorable discharge out of the Marine Corps and come home, and collectively we decided to place my son for adoption. So it's still hard to talk about this. In March 1985, I gave birth to my son at a hospital in Cincinnati, and the adoption plans were already in place. And so I got to spend about a day and a half with him in the hospital and write him a letter, tell him how much I loved him and that this was the best thing for him. And so I went straight from the hospital to the courthouse, and I signed the papers and turned him over to his new family. I made that decision out of complete love for him and an understanding greater than myself that God placed on my heart. The parenting that I received was not good training for me to be a good mom. And I was terrified that I would abuse my child and just make bad decisions. And so deep in my heart, I really wanted to keep him, and I wanted to be his mother. But I followed what God asked me to do, and that was to give him to a family who really could raise him well. After that day, I really never was the same. I left such a large part of my heart with him in the hospital, and I really just began to seriously seek out things that were bad for me to fill that hole in my soul. Over the next 8 years or so, I would abuse alcohol, get into relationships, and give my body away to people who didn't deserve me. I just really was chasing something that would heal that hole. And of course, nothing really ever did. By the age of 28, I began a career in TV news. I had kind of gotten my life together by the grace of God and found myself in a career that I really loved. I excelled at it, but there was still a large part of my heart missing with not having my son with me. I moved all over the country with my new job and worked in a couple of different markets, TV stations in different markets, different networks, and started out as a reporter, became a producer and then an executive producer. And it was a great career for me because it was very chaotic and stressful. And that's really all I really knew from my home life. So it was a good fit for me, but it just exacerbated my eating disorder and really left me feeling lonely because I moved around a lot to excel in the business. I moved to Miami, Florida, and took a position down there, ended up getting married, and really had never wanted children after I placed my son for adoption because I associated babies with pain and suffering, emotional suffering. And but God put on my heart that I should start a family, and my husband wanted to do that. So about 2 years into the marriage, I got pregnant, and with our first child, and I lost that baby to miscarriage at 7 weeks. I got pregnant again in 2003, and that pregnancy was successful, and I had my son Keegan, who is now 10, and he is the joy of my life. I got pregnant twice more, lost the next one to miscarriage, and that next pregnancy I lost a set of twins. So overall I've lost 4 babies to miscarriage. While I was losing that, the second of the twins, I had lost the first at around 7 weeks, and then at around 9 weeks I was losing the second. And during that time I also was going through a very unexpected, painful divorce. It was a hard year for me, losing 3 babies in a marriage. And I took my son and I moved back here to Cincinnati, and we just started over. I felt like God was giving me another chance to get it right. And unfortunately, I kept trying to fill that hole in my soul, which just kept getting deeper and deeper with all of the wounds that I was suffering, and through all my life experiences. And I just didn't know how to deal with that. And so my eating disorder continued, and I got back into running very seriously. And I continued to choose relationships that were just really damaging to me. At the age of 41, I found myself pregnant, I was really excited because I really wanted another baby. But the father was not excited. And he told me that he would not support me emotionally or financially. I think his quote was, "I can't have a bastard child running around." And so I became very fearful. I was already struggling emotionally, being a single parent for 2 years, and I just didn't know how I could find the strength to do it with another child. I became concerned about finances, and I really fell victim and succumbed to the lies in my head from the enemy, who said that abortion was the answer. I was pro-life, I am pro-life, and yet I still chose abortion for my daughter at 7 weeks into the pregnancy. And I chose to have it done very quickly because I knew that if I saw an ultrasound or I felt her, I would keep her. And so he offered to pay for half of it. So I went to the abortion clinic. In the morning that I went there, the waiting room was full of women. It was packed, really. And I just remember, that nobody would really look at each other. Looking back, I feel like there was just a tremendous amount of shame that blanketed that room, as we were all pretty much waiting for the same thing. As I look back, a lot of that time in that clinic was kind of a blur. I really just wanted it to be over, and I had gone alone. I didn't have anyone. I didn't tell anyone else other than the father that I was doing this. And I had one friend who I had shared it with, and she had tried to talk me out of it because she had had an abortion. But I was not going to be swayed. I was pretty much on a mission from hell. When I went into the procedure room, that is the first time that I met my doctor. I had never met him prior to that. And as soon as I sat in that chair, I regretted it. But I couldn't go back. I had a suction abortion, and it's a vacuum that pulls your child out of you. And I could literally hear my child dying. And it's a sound that I will never forget. During the procedure, the doctor hadn't fully numbed my cervix, and it was pretty painful physically. And I remember crying out. And his bedside manner wasn't all that. He told me to shut up. And I really felt like when he said that I deserved that because of what I was doing to my child. And when it was all over with, my soul was completely tortured. I left the clinic that day, and I passed the pro-life protesters outside, and I couldn't look at anybody. I cried all the way home. I called the friend of mine that I had shared it with, who tried to talk me out of it, and she was just very kind. She just listened to me, but I pretty much just cried into the phone. And that really began the darkest night of my soul, because I lived with that sin for 5 years. I knew God knew what I did, but I couldn't look at him. And even though I went to church every Sunday and I prayed, I was just numb. I was completely overwhelmed with shame and suffering. I met my current husband a couple of years after the abortion, and I finally told him about 5 years after the procedure, and he suggested that I confess my sin. And so I did go to confession and confess my sin, but I really didn't feel forgiven. And it wasn't really until about a year later that I had an experience watching a very powerful video on the power of the cross of Jesus Christ, and I realized what he did for me on that cross, that he took my sin of abortion on him, and he suffered the death that I should have died so that I could have forgiveness and mercy and grace. And I just fell to my knees and asked him to be the Lord of my life and take over the mess that I had created. I asked for forgiveness, and I know that I got it. He changed my heart that day. He transformed me, and at the same time, I could feel him reaching in and taking all of the darkness, all of the heaviness, the load that I had been carrying for 48 years. And he just took it. And then he deposited within my heart a conviction to tell this story to everyone who will listen, to try to save one baby or one soul, one life, one family. And through that, I am telling my story today. I have forgiveness, I have redemption, I have mercy, and I have peace, most of all. It is still painful for me to go through that day and talk about it. It's painful for me to talk about all of the suffering in my life. But I have joy in my suffering because it brought me here. I have the ability to share this with other people and to be God's hands and feet here on earth, and to help someone who might be where I was, a scared mom-to-be, not sure what to do. Today I have a whole and complete family. I have a child that I'm raising that I love and adore. I have been really blessed. I want to tell you that the way that God got me back, the way that God led me to forgiveness, was my concern and fear over where I would go when I die after having that abortion, and not being able to meet those children that I miscarried, that I never got to hold or love. And I just have to see them one day. I have to. And so through that, God reached me. And now I know that I will be with all of my children one day. And that gives me peace. I have chosen death for one of my children. And I have also made the decision for life. And there's only one choice that can be made, one choice that a mother can live with, and that is life.